It's Tuesday, it's June 6th, 2023. I'm watching on Channel 7 News. They have breaking news. There's a really bad, it's been a few days this week, but today they have like a whole piece put on it. Both of the weathermen, not only Lee Goldberg, but Jeff Smith as well. And so I'm going to just highlight their feature this evening. They said that there's fires in Quebec, and I'm sitting here in my quiet. I already know what's outside the window. I know I've had trouble this week with some other type of sense in the air. This morning, I looked on Facebook, and I've been reporting for a while some of the ongoings with the deterioration of the cleanliness and things, for which, again, it's a public health concern. And I don't know how humans handle that kind of thing. I mean, again, I grew up here, I graduated from a high school here, but there was no talks about keeping in touch with civics and civils, and if things happen, where do you report them? Who needs to know these things? Who are our people? So I'm just making a journal, and I looked on Facebook, and I saw half my face at one point was paralyzed, like drooping. That was about the same time that my knees were swelling. And I just couldn't get, I was just having a really hard time. And I was just documenting it because it was just me here and there's nobody else. So there's that. And then there's this, now where there's this Canadian fires, and I'm thinking, like, I mean, I talk just locally in New York City. If somebody's burning something, there's the fuels, like the burning of the fuels that I've made notes of, concerns about the quality of the fuel, especially with such a dark soot gathering on the ground. But, and then knowing that while I'm documenting just my own health portion of it, because, like, I don't have a full-time job. I can't find a full-time job. So I took on the responsibility of just documenting as one person in the field what my face looked like. The fact that my knees weren't working on a daily log of some of the, like, along with this climate change, along with global climate change. And then I'm thinking back to my Aunt Judy. Now, I'm not a car enthusiast by any stretch of the imagination, but my aunt, she liked the muscle cars, and some of my relatives liked the automobile, and they stayed true to that. But Judith lived in this tiny house, smaller than the apartment I'm living in now, inside Belrose, and she stayed there from the moment she got married until the day she died. And I'm thinking of the horrible death. She got cancer, lung cancer, and then they gave her these inhalants to suck on, and they were supposed to be some kind of treatment, but it almost like just took the rest of her health away so much faster. And what worries me is the smell of whatever she was smelling, whatever she was inhaling, or whatever she was prescribed by these doctors. Sometimes I smell it in my local area. And that's what frightens me. And then not knowing where to report it. Like, again, because, like, I get that there's business and travel, and there's that whole effect, but where is that? Like, why not create a system where the voices are being heard? Like, they've cut me off where I don't even know where to report some of these things, but it is for the betterment of whatever's living here, or whatever travels here, that these things get addressed. And then I look at I had to erase some of the photos because to me, it's just like, it's devastating just how disgusting life has become in this area. And as a human, it feels like trapped animals that are being just cast out and poisoned. That's really what I feel like at the moment. So while somebody else is benefiting, as I read this book of Crazy Rich Asians, and their opulence that they get to live at, and just knowing how I wake up every day in the complete opposite of that. And I wasn't raised that this was going to be my outcome. I wasn't. So there's that. And just this conversation that needs to be had, but I don't know who's having it, and I don't know how to have it safely. And then knowing that, like, the upset and the prejudice that I've had shown upon my person, even though I don't face to face, I'm just Disney princess in a theme park, and the theme park's broken at the moment. So, like, I'm just here trying to care for myself, and whatever is local, if it benefits them, I'm just trying to, like, whatever. So, but even on that simple understatement, there has been so much prejudice showed against me. Like, this summer for camp for my son, I still, live people, I get the brush off. I mean, I still don't have this volunteer so Anthony can go to camp and learn how to swim and have some social exercise with the children and learn to play sports and all the really important things. I still don't, and I called the church this morning to ask if they had an alternative that they could recommend, because I feel so alienated by whatever is gathering in New York, because it looks like a plethora of multi-nations. But here we are. And then I was watching on the multiverse of Spider-Man. And on that version, she took a swab of cells, and the cells were decaying. And I'm like, right, well, that's what I've been going through here in New York, especially since I've come back to Queens. But even in Suffolk, it was happening. And the doctor they called it anemia. They labeled it anemia. But I had really high platelets and really low erythrocytes in my hematocrit. And it was continuously and without any kind of remedy. So, I mean, I even see it sometimes in the movies referenced. Just this dereliction of the system at this point from where I stand.
We also want some breaking news right now coming out of New Jersey. This is brand new video of a brush fire burning in Jackson Township in Ocean County. Now, this comes on a day that the service is double-staffed because of a red flag warning that has been issued by the National Weather Service until 8 o'clock tonight. You can see the thick white smoke that is burning there. The red flag warning is because of the combination of high temperatures, low humidity, and strong winds. 60 fire engines have been on patrol all day waiting to be dispatched in the event of a fire, which, as we can see right there, one is now burning.
Our fire towers are staffed, so we have folks that are out keeping an eye on the forest. Unfortunately, with today's haze and things like that, that smoke that's coming down from Canada is making things a little bit difficult for our folks to see.
Well, under that red flag warning, all open burning is banned right now. That includes campfires or fires for any agricultural purposes.
Wow, this is just adding to all the problems we already got with the air quality, right, Lee?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And, you know, just the fact that this smoke is around, we talked earlier, and I'll go to Jeff in just a little bit to talk about the air quality moving forward. When you have the additional smoke particulates in the air, there's more friction there. And if you notice, we've got a couple of cells, and they're not all that impressive across parts of New Jersey, but sometimes you can produce actually more lightning because you have more of those particulates in there causing the friction. So even if you don't get like a thunderstorm that's causing a lot of rain, you could just have some dry lightning, and also that could spark a brush fire. So the overall fire risk is enhanced by what we have going on. And at the same time, the thunderstorms that are around, some of those particulates can help thunderstorms grow a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But right now, there's a special marine warning that's near Fire Island right now. Look at all the lightning from Oak Beach, Water Island, Fire Island, back to Islip. And that's about to move offshore, thankfully. But heavy downpours and a pretty big lightning display. This one over Yonkers and Eastchester is headed to New Rochelle up to Mamaroneck and Rye. That'll also go over the Sound, so get ready in parts of north. So there's the setup with the upper low, and you see what's happening with that circulation. Hundreds of wildfires here in Quebec, and downstream here we are, and we're just channeling all that smoke right down the Hudson River Valley. Meteorologist Jeff Smith in the Weather Center with more on how bad it's going to get over the next 48 hours and, you know, what is going to be the impact here through the second half of the week.
Well, and you mentioned those fine particulates. You want to avoid breathing in you want to breathe in as few of those as possible, basically. So you want to avoid a lot of strenuous outdoor activity where you're breathing very heavily. And that's especially for sensitive groups. If you have heart or lung disease in this orange zone, which covers much of our area. But if you're in the unhealthy air quality area, which is highlighted here in red, anyone can be affected by this really bad air quality. So you want to really limit your time outdoors. We're talking parts of, say, Brooklyn and Queens, eastern parts of the Bronx, all the way back into western parts of Nassau County, eastern parts of Long Island as well. And that.
Now, like, what I don't understand is when I was in elementary school, middle school, and high school, ample opportunity for the state of New York or the federal government or the United States or the whatever that exists here, because I'm one of the ancestors, there was plenty of time to teach about climate change, global warming, all that stuff, how and where to stay in communication, like where to get one's nationally secure information from. There was none of that. There was no training. There was no teaching. There was no, we had like a president physical fitness test to make sure that we were fit as a fiddle and we were ready for service with a presidential seal. And there was some other stuff that went on. But as far as did they teach us who to listen, where to tune in, where to communicate with, none of that. I don't know why. I don't know under whose plan that was to leave us unarmed and unaware in the field of New York. But like even my children, who then arrived and went to school here, they never came home and had integrative communications with me that they were learning about any of this stuff. Like a great way for those of us that missed the first set of, like, lack of a better term, like whatever, like the real men are outside of Boy Scouts, who take this on as a livelihood. Like, there was no integration to keep us as women, as mothers, as future, like, leaders of the next generation. There was no integration of communications of, like, how do I keep inside some kind of shifting paradigm and stay, like, within tribal nation for whatever I am inside this whatever. Like, there was none of that. That was completely taken out, knocked out. I don't know what the words are, but I'm still deficient of it for my little one.
Zone, also up into the Hudson Valley into southwestern parts of Connecticut. You saw Lee showing how the smoke is basically being siphoned by the weather pattern from all these fires over Quebec, Canada, right down into our neck of the woods. And by 8 p.m., the smoke can even get thicker. So as we head towards sunset, it can get worse. And then by later on tonight, maybe it becomes a little bit more diffuse late tonight into early tomorrow morning. But check out this plume that's coming down from Quebec, down through eastern parts of, say, Lake Ontario, western parts of New York. Literally, the colors are off our scale here. It goes from purple to nothing, indicating that there's some really, really thick smoke up here over southeastern Canada. And this can loop back into our area by later on tomorrow, into tomorrow evening. Hopefully by Thursday, some cleaner air begins to circulate in from New England, at least.
This is what it looks like. They're saying air quality alert.
Good afternoon. With an air quality alert in effect right now, as smoke from wildfires burning more than 3,000 miles away in Canada drift into parts of our area and in the process raise health concerns for many. And good afternoon, I'm David Navarro.
And I'm Liz Cho. That air quality alert is in effect through at least midnight tonight for all 5 boroughs, as well as parts of Long Island, the Hudson Valley, New Jersey, and Connecticut. The areas in red that you see there on your screen are dealing with the worst of this haze.
Yeah, the smoky skies in parts of the area, the result of more than 160 forest fires burning in Quebec. Officials there are saying this is shaping up to be among Canada's worst fire seasons ever. And as a result, New Yorkers are now being urged to do what they can to conserve energy and reduce pollution, from using mass transit, turning off the lights when you can, to using fans to circulate the air.
Yeah, the tiny particles that cause haze can be especially harmful for children, seniors, and pregnant women. But with conditions this bad, just about everyone is feeling the impact. People are even being advised to avoid strenuous outdoor activities or consider moving them inside if you can.
We are all over this story. Eyewitnesses reporter Stefan Kim spent much of the day in one of the hardest hit areas. But first, Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg joining us with more. Lee.
Yeah, this is a real serious issue here. It's not just a one-day event. It's cumulative. It's going to have to become part of our routine here, allowing for this unhealthy air and, if we have respiratory issues, to get inside. But it is a dual threat this afternoon. We have a thunder threat across parts of the area and the smoky skies that will persist over the next several days. The scattered showers and thunderstorms will go into early evening. They're actually most widespread across the area now. Isolated strong storms can bring some hail, gusty winds, and the dangerous lightning, which could be fire starters across the area. And this thick, unhealthy haze from wildfires, it can actually enhance storms, and we'll talk about that in Maine weather. Meanwhile, the severe thunderstorm warning that was just over Long Island was allowed to expire at 1 o'clock. Concentration may actually be what we're going through now. To the haze, that's coming downstream. The thickest haze and smoke is actually during the evening hours, so the air quality is only going down into the evening hours, and a red flag warning because of low humidity, gusty breezes.
The air quality in the Bronx is notoriously bad, but throw in Canadian wildfires drifting into the region, and this is what you get. Blanketed in a haze, one expert tells us this week will be 3 times worse than normal. All around the South Bronx, you can see it. Dust floating around from construction. Trucks, buses, cars, and trains, everywhere you look.
I stay sick a lot with my asthma, and it's bad because there's a lot of dust in the air. You know, can't breathe.
Ethan from the South Bronx takes off his mask when he goes indoors and puts it on when he steps outside. It is the opposite of how we behaved during the pandemic. But while Ethan started wearing a mask because of COVID, he has continued masking up.
I can smell it and feel it, yeah.
Because of the poor air quality. Ethan used to have asthma.
Here it's like you cough if a car passes by with the emissions.
In this part of the Bronx, where we see some of the highest asthma rates in the nation, the EPA is so concerned it has air quality monitors at PS 52 and above this bodega on Fail Street. Now add to it Canadian wildfires drifting across the region, making for dangerous air quality conditions. The state's Department of Health recommends limiting strenuous outdoor physical activity, adding that young people and those with respiratory problems will be particularly impacted.
This is a lot worse than what we've seen in many, many years. And it's a serious event.
Dr. Jack Caravanos is an environmental health expert at NYU who studies environmental toxins and pollutions. He says this week, because of the Canadian wildfires, you may also want to rethink removing the mask indoors.
As time goes on, the air inside a building will ultimately equal the air outside. So for homes and restaurants and delicatessens, the air quality in these buildings will be pretty much the same as outside, especially as this thing goes on for a few days.
Now back here live as you take a look at the George Washington Bridge, or at least what you can see of it. Stop me if you've heard this before, but the doctor says since it's unrealistic to be masked up all the time every day, he says the best solution is to exercise regularly to promote a healthy respiratory system. Reporting live in Englewood Cliffs, Stefan Kim, Channel 7. Eyewitness News.
Wow, Stefan, thank you very much. And you heard Lee mention this haze will likely be sticking around for a few more days.
So I'm just, what I've been noticing in the local area, but again, I mean, at this point, it's, you make note of it, but now I'm having trouble with getting employment. And I don't even know where to go. And something as simple as volunteering one's time in order to make sure my son has admission to a camp. Something so simple. And also on that is there was a grant that was given to PS31 for which I am eternally grateful. It was something called esports, but on the advertisement, I mean, that's where they set the expectation. I didn't come up with this myself. They said that there would be like career training and like teaching them about the field of esports. Again, like more of like a development or like an enhancement. Like, so he could, like, I thought he could learn about the vocabulary, like things that I don't have access to. But when it actually went into the school, all it is some kind of interactive console, and they play the same games on repeat over the 6 weeks. And there was one class that differed where they told them about cyberbullying. My son was like, it's not what you think it was. It's not what the paper said it was. He's like, it's totally different. And I'm like, all right, thanks for the feedback. Again, I'm just putting that back into the system. Again, I don't want to be negative. I want to be like really proud. I want to do like I Love New York and sing it from the rooftops. Like we all get along. Like it is a Disney theme park. There's not one person who's angry in New York. But I live in the real world. And I stay close to home because the real world is more frightening than some of the movies that they put out there. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way Universe, Galaxy is Broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. And for some reason, even though there's this broken system, and they do need to hear voices, and they do need input put in, they didn't put proper channels in order to get feedback from the ancestors of the U.S. system and some of the other systems that exist around the world. So I'm just not sure how to voice myself correctly other than this venue, but then this poses a potential for offsetting something else. But again, like, this is this squeaky wheel. I mean, where is it appropriate? I mean, there's nobody to speak to on this stuff. There's no counselor, there's no advisor, there's no anything.